Hi, everybody. Andy Roszak, Executive Director at the Institute for Childhood Preparedness, back with you again. And sadly, we have some more lessons learned from the recent shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. And I wanted to just dig into some of this stuff. It's just so sad that these tragedies continue to occur. And I think it's incumbent on us to learn all we can do to help keep ourselves safe. And more importantly, those kids that are in our care, that are in our control and in our custody, as safe as we possibly can. So I will say, it's been a couple of weeks here since this tragedy has happened. We purposefully engaged in a period of no comment after these events. As you're probably aware, there's just too much false information that gets spread after each one of these disasters and emergencies. And we don't want to engage in any kind of misinformation spreading or rumor mongering or anything like that. So our approach has been and always will be to wait for the official reports to come out so that way we can tell you some information that we know is trustworthy and some information that we know is factual. Unfortunately, many of the failures in Uvalde stem from complacency and a lack of vigilance. Also, several of the lessons that we're seeing now in Uvalde, Texas, especially the law enforcement response, gosh, they have been known for a long time, some dating all the way back to 1999 and that horrific shooting that happened at Columbine High School. It was sad enough to learn these lessons back then in 1999, but I got to tell you, it's even more heartbreaking that we have to learn these lessons again in the wake of yet another tragedy. So let's honor the victims from both Columbine and now from Uvalde, and let's ensure that we are truly doing all we can do to make our programs as safe and as secure as possible. Lesson number one, this can happen in your community. And my goal here is not to increase your anxiety, is not to increase your fear, nothing like that. I don't want to cause any panic. However, we have to live in reality. And what we are seeing across the United States, in fact, we've seen it in 2019, in 2020, and in 2021. Those are the three highest years on record for mass shooting events. And it's a trend that's troubling, but friends, reality is that it's a trend that is continuing. These mass shootings, these incidents, they don't just happen in big cities. As we look around all over the place, right? From Parkland, Florida, to Sandy Hook, to Columbine, to Uvalde, they happen everywhere. So we've got to get into that mindset of making preparedness a priority. But again, we're not going to live in fear. We're not going to be, anxious. We're not going to have any of those types of things. We're going to do what our tagline says. Don't be scared, but be prepared. Just as we prepare for fires and floods and tornadoes and earthquakes, we got to make sure our programs are prepared for these type of incidents as well. So let's walk through a couple of different things that we've got here. Lesson number two, the doors must be secured, you guys. The biggest single thing that you can do to protect yourself and those kids in your care is to make sure that your doors are locked. This includes not only the doors from the outside, but also the doors for your vehicle. We've seen a tremendous uptick in carjackings. In fact, our friends over at Kids in Car Safety reported that in the first quarter of 2022, one vehicle a day was stolen with a child inside. And, we think we're just going to run in for a second, right? We're going to run in for a second. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Or our parents that have older kids, they're going to run in for a second and drop off the toddler at our program and then go down the street and drop off their other child. Well, guess what, friends? It never really just takes a second. And for many of these criminals, a second is really all that they need, isn't it? So we got to make sure we secure our doors. On the day of the shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, in violation of school policy, no one had locked any of the exterior doors on the west building of Robb Elementary. As a result, the attacker had unimpeded access to enter the building. As noted in the committee's report, locking the exterior and interior doors may not have been enough to stop the attacker, but had the school personnel locked the doors as per the school's policy, boy, that could have slowed his progress for a few valuable minutes. And given teachers time to receive alerts, to hide children, to lock doors, to evacuate, and potentially long enough time to give the police extra time and more opportunity to engage and stop the attacker before he could massacre those 19 students and 2 teachers. Sadly, this lackadaisical approach did help the shooter. And in particular, the one room that he gained entry to, room 111, was widely known to be faulty in terms of safety and security. Room 111 was ordinarily unsecured and accessible. Room 111 could be locked, but an extra effort was required to make sure that that latch engaged. In other words, sometimes that door wouldn't just close on its own. You'd have to go and pull on that door to get that lock to engage. Many at the school, and this is from the official report, many at the school knew room 111's door had a faulty lock, and school district police had specifically warned the teacher about it. The problem with locking the door had been reported to school administration, yet nobody took that step of actually placing a work order to get the door fixed. It's simply heartbreaking, isn't it, my friends? Now, we've traveled the country and seen all sorts of different things. One of the myths that we busted way back in 2019 was this fallacy that childcare programs must keep all the doors unlocked all the time. And you can read our blog post about that, where we talk to licensing officials, we talk to fire marshals, we have all sorts of documentation. The bottom line is, friends, nobody in today's society, with everything that is going on, is going to encourage you to leave your doors wide open and unlocked at all hours of the day. That's just not reality. So please take steps to secure your doors. It is cost effective. It does not cost you anything to make sure that your doors are locked. Lesson number 3, communication is just so vital and so essential. And if you've taken any of our courses, you know we talk about communication. In fact, we have a whole course just on communication as well. Communication is one of those pieces to your response that is so critical, and your communication methods should be practiced daily. During an emergency, we rely on the familiar. We go back to what we know, and that's true in any stressful situation. So, we need to think about, what are we going to do? How are we going to communicate in an emergency? And I got to tell you, a big spoiler alert here is that simply buying stuff does not equal preparedness. So you can buy the best intercom in the world, you can buy the best walkie-talkies in the world, you can spend as much money as you want to on fancy apps and other things, but if they don't work and people don't know how to use them and you don't know the limitations, they're not going to be any good during an emergency. So, prime example here, we had a teacher that was outside at Robb Elementary. Her name was Coach Sylvia, and she was outside on the playground with 3rd grade students. She was looking around, having great situational awareness, and she saw the shooter approaching. She saw the shooter throw a backpack over a 5-foot chain link fence. She then saw the shooter, all dressed in black, climb up over the fence. She then saw the shooter take steps towards her and the children and begin shooting. She radioed immediately to the office. Coach Sylvia, to the office. Somebody just jumped over the fence and he's shooting. She ran towards a group of 3rd graders to tell them to lock down and get out of there. She expected to hear an announcement of a lockdown, but she did not hear one right away. The principal was in her office at the time this radio call was made, and she received the radio call from Coach Silva. Principal Mandy had just finished an award ceremony and was in her office when she heard the coach report over the radio. She attempted to initiate a lockdown on an application on their phone. The application was called Raptor, but she had difficulty in making the alert because of a bad Wi-Fi signal at the school. She did not attempt to communicate the lockdown alert over the school's intercom. You guys, it's great to have technology. It's great to have fancy apps and all this kind of stuff, but we've got to prepare to do simple things during stressful times, right? So this app didn't work. And if you read the report, you find out many teachers didn't get the alert. There's poor Wi-Fi signal throughout the building. There's really horrific cell phone signals. Teachers didn't have their phones. Teachers had their phones turned off, et cetera, et cetera. So I ask you, if the app isn't going to work, what else could we do? How about something as simple as using the intercom? How about something even simpler of just yelling down the hallway or using an air horn, something like that, that would quickly let everybody in the vicinity know that there's an emergency. Again, these apps are great when they work, but our job in preparedness is to think about when things don't work. And I don't want some system to be so overly complicated that it doesn't work and it becomes our single point of failure. So making sure we know what to do, making sure we communicate effectively is just so darn important.
All right. Shooter in the building. Active shooter in the building. This is a drill. Active shooter in the building.
Good. Lesson number 4, our response is of paramount importance. And most people think about the success or a failure of an emergency or a disaster to really be in the hands of our traditional first responders, all right? Law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics. However, the truth really is, when seconds matter, help is minutes away. So I ask you, who really is that first responder? And I think we need to start thinking ourselves as the initial responder. And quite honestly, we're the ones that set the tone. We're the ones that make those critical, crucial decisions and determine whether or not this event is going to be a tragedy or whether or not this event is going to have a better than expected outcome. And thinking about who could have really prevented the deaths in Uvalde, the committee has a statement here in their report. Approximately 142 rounds were fired by the shooter in the building. Approximately 21 of those 142 rounds can be identified after law enforcement arrived. It appears to be virtually certain that over 100 rounds were fired before the arrival of the law enforcement officers. So again, my friends, making sure we know what to do, making sure that we take life-saving action is so critical. This is just one more incident that highlights how important our actions truly are. Lesson number 5, we must always remain vigilant. Now, Uvalde, Texas is close to the border, and it seems like they have had some incidences in the past of police chases, of folks that have been illegally crossing the border and then getting to chases with law enforcement or trying to escape or evade from law enforcement. And that led to basically the school becoming calloused, the school becoming lackadaisical because there were so many different alerts that they were responding to. So as the committee noted, the frequency of these alarms, around 50 of these alarms called for lockdown between February and May of 2022, contributed to a diminished sense of vigilance about responding to security alerts. This led teachers and administrators to respond to all alerts with less urgency. And when they heard the sound of the alert on this fateful day, many assumed it was just another police chase and didn't act with the kind of speed and urgency that was truly needed to prevent a tragedy. Now, we talk about this a lot in our situational awareness course, and one of the best things that you can do is being more aware of your surroundings. If you have not yet taken our course, I would encourage you to do so. It's not scary at all, but it really gives you some insights, some tools, some techniques on how you can be more situationally aware of what's going on at home and, importantly, at work as well. So in closing, it just breaks my heart that we continue to have to learn these lessons. And, sadly, we know that Uvalde, Texas is not going to be the last active shooter that we have to talk about. So I'm asking you, please take a deep breath. Let's learn some of these lessons. Let's make sure we're doing all we can do to keep our program safe. Let's make sure we're getting back to the basics and doing really simple things like locking our doors, like being aware of what's going on around us, like making sure our communication methods are ironed out and we know how to rely on technology, but we also know what to do when technology fails. And we communicate this plan with everybody. We have to make sure all of our teachers, all of our staff, all of our substitutes, all of our support personnel all know what to do in an emergency and a disaster. I hope you stay safe out there, and I'll see you again in the very near future.